like signed, sealed, delivered. Just up to them now. You know shit got serious because I just got out the Emmanuel Stewart Kronk boot, the original OG boot. There you go. I'm breaking these bad boys back out of retirement for the Wilder fight. Deontay Wilder, you're gonna get it, mate. You're in big trouble.
Well, just signed my portion of the contract of the Wilder versus Fury fight. It is officially on, ladies and gentlemen. This fight is definitely on, man, and I can't wait, man. It's gonna be a exciting fight. It's gonna be an explosive fight. And it's gonna be one for the legacy.
I'm sure by the time you watch this, you will have heard the news already that Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury have both signed their ends of the contract, and the fight is official. This news is coming just about a day after, because just yesterday I was asking, when are we really going to hear something tangible in regards to this fight? Because a lot of the news that we were receiving was speculative, open to interpretation, nothing concrete. And this is the first concrete news that we've heard about it. The fight date is official. However, there are mixed reports that the proposed undercard fight between Leo Santa Cruz and Gary Russell Jr., that's out. But Keith Thurman may be stepping in. Keith Thurman and I believe Jarrett Hurd also. In any event, if that's the case, if those guys are going to be on the undercard, having fights of their own, then that makes for a really good undercard. Now,
as far as the
news itself, the fight between Deontay Wilder, the WBC champion, and the lineal champion, Tyson Fury, as far as the fight itself, what do I think?
It's a good play.
I think
if it comes off,
that these two guys are entering in this situation so that the victor will approach an Anthony Joshua fight with significantly more leverage than they had they not participated in this fight. In other words, they've got to risk something if they're going to get what they want from a Joshua fight. They've got to raise their marquee value, and one of the only ways for them to really do that is to target each other. In that way, it's what I was describing in my previous video, that these guys are kind of letting their powers combine, that they're using each other, whether they do fight or they don't fight.
Either way.
Even if they do fight, they are still using each other to gain leverage and to take some of the luster away from Anthony Joshua. It's a smart move. It's about one of the best moves they can make if the fight is real, if the fight comes off. If by the time the date rolls around, nobody pulls out, and these guys do enter the ring, if there is a victor, whoever the victor is, he's going to be able to approach an Anthony Joshua fight with substantially more leverage than they had before the fight. So in that way, it's a good idea. Now, I've addressed the skepticism associated with this proposed fight many times in the last couple of weeks, last month or so. I've addressed the skepticism associated with this fight because there are a lot of people out there that aren't convinced that Tyson Fury would really take on a challenge like this on this kind of notice, when he's only really had 2 tune-ups against 2 guys who do not represent the upper echelon of heavyweights in any way, that he's taking a big risk. And if he were going to take a big risk like this in a fight that he could lose, why wouldn't he just challenge Joshua straight away and get a payday? The way that this breaks down, if he don't beat Wilder, there goes your payday, and there goes the intrigue of a domestic grudge match between the UK's best, Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. That's the reason that a lot of people really, even now, they're not really sold, because they feel, and I agree that, it is something that could happen, they feel that at any given time in the weeks leading up to the fight with Wilder, that Tyson Fury would just find a way to pull out of the fight. That's a part of the reason that people have been so skeptical, because in the Klitschko fight, they had ironed out all the details for the rematch. They had the date, they had the venue, everything is situated. And in the weeks leading up to that, what happened? Fury pulled out. That's a part of the reason that even now, in spite of these announcements, there are still people that are skeptical. But if, hypothetically speaking, if they do fight, if barring any unforeseen bullshit, nobody pulls out, the fight is real, they enter the ring with each other, what do I think is going to happen? I think that Deontay Wilder is going to knock out Tyson Fury. That's what I think. I think that in those early rounds, the boxing acumen, the boxing skills of Tyson Fury will trouble Wilder, much like we've seen other guys trouble Wilder early in a fight. Tyson Fury's movement, given his size, his elusiveness, his crafty
maneuvering,
yet at the same time awkward
herky jerky
boxing style, all of these are things that can give Deontay Wilder a problem because, well, Tyson Fury, he is a more defensively sound fighter than anyone that Deontay Wilder has fought. He also just so happens to be a bigger guy than anyone that Deontay Wilder has fought. So in those early rounds, I anticipate that, Tyson Fury, maybe, he looks good for a little while. He does, the way a lot of guys do, before Wilder knocks him out. Look, you can sit there, and I said this before, I'll say it again. You can sit there on the turnbuckle with a Francesco Pianetta, doing your best impersonation of Muhammad Ali. You can sit there and avoid punches from a guy like that off the turnbuckle because he's a smaller guy. He doesn't have the kind of ring coverage that Deontay Wilder has. He doesn't have the wingspan, he doesn't have the size or the athleticism, the sharpness in his punches, or the same kind of punching power. Essentially, you can sit there and do that with a Pianetta, you can sit there and do that with
Joe, who the fuck?
a variety of fringe guys, but not with Deontay Wilder. You give this guy half a chance to land that right hand, showboating or anything like that, and you're gonna hit the deck. And while I don't want it to seem like it's a foregone conclusion that Wilder wins the fight, when you factor in the intangibles that, Fury really hasn't been tested in a while, he hasn't been pushed in a while. The last time he was really pushed, quote unquote, was the Klitschko fight. That was 2015.
Long time ago.
And since that time, you haven't faced a really credible threat. So, you going into a fight like this, it gives me the impression that, for the first 2-3 rounds, yeah, you'll look okay for the first 2-3 rounds.
Okay.
But Wilder
He's gonna get you.
is going to get gutsy, and he's going to go for it. And you will find him harder to avoid than the last two guys you fought. There's a chance Wilder trips over his own feet. He finds Fury a bit hard to track down in the ring. Yeah, for a while. Up until the knockout. And rest assured, that's what I believe is going to happen. I believe that Deontay Wilder, at some point in the mid-rounds, mid to late, he knocks Tyson Fury out. As far as the aesthetic of the fight, the dynamics, the mechanics, how's the fight gonna look? Is it gonna be a stinker like the Klitschko versus Fury fight, a fight that really wouldn't draw in a casual audience because quite honestly, there's not enough action? Is it gonna be a fight like that? And I dare say no. I don't think that this fight is going to have that same aesthetic. The aesthetic that I have in mind is more along the lines of the Deontay Wilder versus Gerald Washington fight. You see, in Gerald Washington, Deontay Wilder was facing a moving target with comparable size to his own and a decent jab. So I imagine that in Tyson Fury, the aesthetic of the fight, when you mix and match both of these guys' styles, it's going to look more like that. You're going to see that Fury is moving and jabbing well, and Wilder's struggling to find his range.
For a little while.
It's just that, Wilder's going to be Wilder. After a while, he's just going to say, fuck it, and he's going to go for it. Wilder's not your guy that you can counteract
his methodology.
His tactics the way that Fury counteracted Klitschko's tactics. Klitschko, he's got to touch you with that jab before he brings over that right hand. He's got to touch you. And if he can't touch you the way he wants to, then he won't bring the right hand over at all. He's methodical that way. But because he's methodical that way, that's a tell. That's a tell that Tyson Fury was able to use to his advantage, whereas Wilder
is wild.
He's very much like his name. He's wild. He's just gonna fucking go for it. He's not a tactician. He's not really methodical in that way.
To use it against him.
So I imagine that when Fury and Wilder, they get in the ring, it's gonna look like the Wilder versus Washington fight, which was a fairly entertaining fight, because this does pertain to entertainment value. You gotta remember, these guys, this thing's supposed to be a pay-per-view. So you're gonna ask people for their cash, you gotta put on a show. And I think that it's gonna be an entertaining fight for however long it lasts. I just don't imagine that it's gonna last
12 rounds.
I don't think it's gonna last 12 rounds. I don't see Fury going the distance with this guy. Part of the reason for that is, Fury's a skilled guy, no doubt about it. And especially for a guy that size to be able to move so well and be awkward and effective in a tactical way, yeah, Fury's a good boxer. But what he's not is a very big puncher. And I think that that's essential to beating Deontay Wilder. It's not just having skill per se. There are a lot of guys in the heavyweight division that are far more fundamentally sound than Deontay Wilder.
Arguably.
There are guys out there that just they don't make the mistakes that he makes from a tactical point of view. But the reason that he can power through those guys is because he's got a level of physicality that they don't have. And Fury doesn't have that marriage of physicality and skill. Fury is not a particularly big puncher. The fact that Fury fights on the go. This is a guy that likes to move and punch. He's not sitting on those punches, so he doesn't have the same kind of mustard on him that a guy like Wilder or Anthony Joshua would have. Anthony Joshua, who is also skilled, but has a certain level of physicality, that he's a big puncher too. It being that Fury's not a particularly big puncher, I don't really see him discouraging Deontay Wilder so much as frustrating him. And that frustration is going to coax Wilder to really go for the gusto the way we're accustomed to seeing him go for the gusto. That, if this thing's going into, round 5 and round 6 and Wilder's not getting much business done, he's just going to get that much more frustrated and go for it. And the fact that Tyson Fury's not a very big puncher, I don't see Fury knocking this guy out. If he were more of a puncher, then you could argue that he can counter Wilder and drop him. Capitalize off of Wilder's mistakes with the boxing, then drop him with a power shot. But Fury's not a big puncher. I mean, we know that.
Yeah.
He's a great boxer, but he's not a big puncher. It is what it is. And I don't feel that Fury's got that particular ingredient, which I think, in my opinion, it's essential to beating Deontay Wilder. Because, you can be more skilled than the guy. He's not the poster child for boxing acumen. But what he is a very big puncher. And against a puncher like that, you need respectable power of your own. This is not Francesco Pianeta. This is not Steve Cunningham. This is not Derek Chisora. This guy hits fucking hard. And you need to be able to at least get this guy's respect. I don't think Fury's gonna do that. You think about that stuff, and you think about that, it's a matter of fact that Fury really hasn't been pushed by a guy in a very long time, and now he's facing what is arguably the biggest puncher, if not the biggest puncher, in the entire weight class. The most concussive guy there. And I don't think it bodes well for Fury. I don't. I anticipate that, this fight will make Wilder not just the WBC champion, which he already is, but the lineal champion. And this will give him that added bit of leverage to make the kind of money that he wants to make against Anthony Joshua. This is the missing ingredient, you understand? Now, this is all relative. It is all relative because remember, this is a pay-per-view. Thus, the success of the pay-per-view is also important. It's important if you're going to talk about boardroom shit, if we're going to talk about splits and all of that kind of shit. The success of this pay-per-view is rudimentary to how those sets of negotiations are going to go, provided that Wilder wins. Then you have to see, okay, how good did the pay-per-view do? Were the fans pleased? What kind of numbers did that bring back? The fight itself will raise Deontay Wilder's profile regardless, with the Americans, but mostly with the Brits, who they know Tyson Fury, they know Anthony Joshua. This is going to go a long way to raise his profile across the pond. But it is relative. It does hinge on, okay, what kind of numbers does the pay-per-view do, It is. It's all relative. But like I said, it is the missing cog. You understand? This fight, it is the right move. In order for either one of these guys to get to where they want to get to with the money man, they've got to go through each other. They got to, hash that shit out between each other to where it's only the victor and Anthony Joshua. So you know what? It's good news. It's good news. Nobody's mad if this fight is real. The only thing is, people have had skepticism because they don't know that Fury's being serious. They question the stability of Tyson Fury, especially making a move like this. But if it's real, then it's good news for everybody, because no matter what, it brings us that much closer to an undisputed heavyweight champion.